Sir, I need you to step away from the building and keep your hands where I can see them.
I'm standing outside my apartment. What seems to be the issue, officer?
We've had reports of someone loitering in this area matching your description.
Loitering? I live here. I've got my keys in my hand.
That's not the point. You fit the description. I need you to comply.
What description would that be?
The officer's hand moved to his belt, and Larry Alex understood with perfect clarity that the next 60 seconds would determine whether he'd be sleeping in his own bed tonight or a holding cell. His hands were already up. His mail was scattered on the concrete, and the body camera was recording a man trying to prove he belonged in front of his own home. Larry Alex didn't look like anyone special that Tuesday afternoon. He was a 62-year-old black man in khaki cargo shorts and a faded olive green t-shirt, holding envelopes in one hand and his apartment keys in the other. His gray-flecked beard needed trimming. His posture suggested someone who'd spent too many years sitting in surveillance vans and briefing rooms. He moved slowly, the way people do when their knees remember every staircase they've ever climbed. To anyone watching, he was exactly what Officer Wilson Shaw saw. A middle-aged man standing outside an apartment building in the middle of a workday with no obvious reason to be there. Larry had lived in apartment 16 for 3 years. Unit 16, second floor, corner unit with the window that faced the parking lot. He'd painted the walls himself. He'd installed better locks. You knew which floorboard creaked near the bathroom and which neighbor played music too loud on Friday nights. But none of that mattered when Shaw's patrol car pulled into the lot at 12:17 p.m. because in that moment, Larry wasn't the resident. He was a black man standing outside, and that was enough. The sun was bright and cold that Tuesday in February 2024. Larry stood sorting his mail when Officer Wilson Shaw approached with measured steps, hand resting near his belt. "Can I ask what you're doing here?" Larry looked up, confused. "Checking my mail." "Do you live here?" "Yes. Apartment 16. Second floor." "I'm gonna need to verify that. We've had complaints about suspicious activity." Larry felt something wrong stir in his chest. "I'm getting my mail. I need to verify your residency for officer safety and community security. Standard protocol." Larry had spent 28 years with the FBI as a supervisory special agent. He recognized bureaucratic language designed to make unreasonable requests sound reasonable. But Shaw's tone wasn't openly hostile. Maybe this would be quick. "I have my driver's license," Larry said, reaching for his wallet. Shaw held up a hand. "I'm going to need you to keep your hands where I can see them, sir." The word "sir" hung in the air like a threat dressed as respect. Larry retrieved his license slowly, handed it over. Shaw examined it far longer than necessary. "This says 538 Riverside Gardens, Apartment 16. "That's correct. Anyone can get a fake ID. It's not fake. I've lived here 3 years. I'm going to need more verification than just an ID card." What followed was 11 minutes of circular reasoning. Larry offered keys. Shaw said anyone could have keys. Larry showed mail with his name and address. Shaw said that proved delivery, not identity. Larry mentioned he was a retired FBI agent and could show credentials. Shaw's expression didn't change. "If you're really FBI, you'd know that doesn't give you special privileges." At 12:28 p.m., 11 minutes into the encounter, Larry understood. Shaw wasn't looking for proof Larry belonged here. Shaw had already decided he didn't. From apartment 14, Mrs. Chen watched from her balcony. She'd filed a complaint once when officers stopped her nephew, marked unfounded. She didn't move. A teenager named Marcus recorded on his phone, but stayed inside. The maintenance worker continued to the dumpster. 3 witnesses who knew that helping Larry might redirect Shaw's attention to them. At 12:34 p.m., Sergeant Ramirez arrived. He listened to Shaw, looked at Larry's ID, looked at Larry, 62 years old, cargo shorts, holding mail and keys like props in a play he didn't audition for. "Mr. Alex, we're gonna need to verify your residency before we can clear this situation." Larry felt something break inside. "I've shown Officer Shaw my license, keys, mail. What additional verification do you need?" "We're gonna need access to your apartment to confirm you actually reside there." "You want me to let you into my apartment?" "For verification purposes." "Do you have a warrant?" "We don't need a warrant if you consent." And if I don't consent, then we'll have to continue this investigation out here. Larry made the calculation. Refuse and face extended detention, maybe arrest for obstruction, or consent to a warrantless search to end this before it got worse. It felt like defeat, but it was tactically sound. I'll consent to your entry for verification purposes only, Larry said, voice flat. No search, just verification. You see the lease, my belongings, then you leave. Ramirez nodded. That's acceptable. They walked to apartment 16. Ramirez entered first. Shaw followed. Larry stood in his doorway watching two officers examine his living room. The apartment told the story Shaw should have heard 20 minutes ago. Photographs in frames, Larry and FBI windbreakers at crime scenes, receiving commendations, standing with other agents. Shelves with constitutional law textbooks, criminal procedure manuals, FBI training materials. A retirement shadow box with Larry's badge, credentials, service weapon permit. A plaque. Supervisory Special Agent Lawrence Alex, 28 years of service. Ramirez picked up a photograph of Larry with the FBI director at an awards ceremony. Set it down carefully. Shaw stared at the walls, the certificates, the evidence. This is sufficient verification, Ramirez said quietly. He turned to Larry. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Alex. Not I'm sorry. Not we made a mistake. Just thank you for your cooperation. As if Larry had voluntarily participated rather than being coerced. Shaw walked out without a word. Ramirez stayed a moment. I apologize for the inconvenience. The words were automatic. An apology that protected the department more than acknowledged harm. Am I free to go? Larry asked, absurd, standing in his own apartment, but nothing about this had followed logic. Yes, sir. You were never detained. This was a consensual encounter. With one sentence, Ramirez redefined everything. Not an unlawful stop, a consensual encounter. Larry could have walked away from, except walking away would have escalated to detention or arrest. Ramirez left. Larry stood in his living room and felt like a stranger in his own space. Larry didn't leave his apartment for 2 days. On the first night, his hands shook, not from fear but from exhaustion of maintaining perfect calm for 23 minutes while officers decided if he had the right to exist in front of his own home. He thought about calling someone. But what would he say? That he was stopped? Legal? Questioned? Legal? Asked for identification? Legal? Consented to apartment entry? Legal? Even when refusal would have consequences. None of it was illegal. All of it was procedure. The body camera would show a polite conversation, a reasonable verification request, a cooperative resident. It wouldn't show the 23 minutes that felt like hours. It wouldn't show the calculation. It wouldn't show the fundamental violation. On February 20th, Larry filed a formal complaint, thorough, time-stamped, with witness names, legal analysis, constitutional concerns. The department acknowledged receipt, standard processing, 60 to 90 days. On March 5th, Investigator Moreno called with follow-up questions. Did officers physically restrain him? No. Did he feel free to leave? No, but the but didn't make it into notes. Did he voluntarily consent to apartment entry? Yes, but the but didn't make it into notes. On April 3rd, 6 weeks after filing, Larry received Captain Mills's letter. After thorough investigation, this department finds that Officer Wilson Shaw acted within established protocols. No policy violations were identified. The encounter was conducted professionally. The subject voluntarily provided information and access. Thank you for your service and cooperation. Larry looked up department statistics. In fiscal year 2024, 147 complaints filed, 131 marked unfounded, 89.1%. 0 resulted in discipline, 0%. He filed a public records request for Shaw's personnel file. Complaints filed, 7. Complaints sustained, 0. Disciplinary actions, 0. Current status, active duty. 7 complaints in 9 years, all unfounded. No pattern identified. On May 15th, 3 months after Larry's encounter, Shaw received a commendation for exemplary performance in proactive community policing. In the 8 months following Larry's encounter, Shaw made 47 resident contact stops, 72.3% black individuals, in a zone that was 41% black. Shaw completed an $47 online training module, scored 94%, returned to patrol. Nothing changed. Because the system had investigated and found no violations. The system protected itself. 3 weeks later, Larry met with Marcus Henderson, a civil rights attorney with $14.30 million in police settlements on his walls. Henderson reviewed everything. You have a case, strong facts, clear Fourth Amendment violation, federal agent gives you credibility, pattern suggests bias. But, Larry said, qualified immunity will probably shield Shaw. Unless you can find a prior case in this circuit with nearly identical facts where a court ruled that exact conduct unconstitutional, immunity applies. Henderson explained, 2 to 4 years of litigation, $50,000, $150,000 in costs if they lose. If they win, settlement with non-disclosure, $200,000, $400,000 after fees. Shaw gets a note in his file and continues working. Department issues statement about training, and next year, someone else gets stopped for getting their mail. Do settlements change the system? Larry asked. No, Henderson said. They don't. Larry thought for 2 weeks. About the money. About the NDA that would silence him. About Shaw making more stops. About 2 to 4 years consumed by a system designed to outlast complainants. He called Henderson. I'm not filing suit. Not because he didn't have a case, but because he'd spent 28 years in law enforcement and understood the system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. Designed to survive accountability, not provide it. He'd rather keep his voice than trade it for money that would change nothing. In August 2024, Larry signed a new lease. Different part of town. Unit 22, 3rd floor, controlled access, security gates. Mrs. Chen helped him pack. I'm sorry I didn't come down, she said. It's okay, Larry said. No, she said. It's not. At his new complex, Larry established new routines. Checked mail at 7 p.m. when parking lots were quieter. Carried his FBI credentials again. Proof, documentation, leverage if it happened again. Started noticing things he'd known intellectually but now experienced viscerally. How often he was the only black person in stores. How security guards tracked his movements buying milk. The constant calculation. Is this a space where someone might call police? Am I standing too long? Existing too visibly? Before February 13th, he'd moved through public spaces assuming he belonged. After February 13th, that assumption was gone. He never saw Shaw again. But he knew the statistics. Officers with complaint patterns rarely changed. Departments that cleared all complaints rarely identified problems until something went viral. Somewhere, probably at the same mailboxes, Shaw would stop someone else. Maybe they'd have credentials. Maybe they'd stay calm. Maybe they'd consent. Or maybe they'd refuse, raise their voice, reach for their phone. And maybe that encounter wouldn't end at 12:40 p.m. with "thank you for your cooperation." In September 2024, a reporter filed public records requests about Zone 7 complaint patterns. Captain Mills's statement, "This department takes all complaints seriously. In fiscal year 2024, we received 147 complaints and investigated each according to protocols. The fact that few are sustained reflects officer professionalism and investigation thoroughness, not accountability failure. We're committed to continuous improvement through training, policy review, and community engagement." The statement said everything and nothing, acknowledged complaints while dismissing them, promised improvement while defending practice. The story ran on page B7. Police Department defends complaint process. Minimal attention, no viral moment. No reform demands. The system survived by outlasting attention. Officer Wilson Shaw continues patrolling Zone 7. Between February and October 2024, 73 resident contact stops, 71.2% black individuals. His stop pattern remained consistent. Complaint file clean, commendations accumulating. November 2024, promoted to senior patrol officer. 3% raise. Memo cited exemplary professional conduct. No mention of Larry Alex. Because there was no sustained violation. Because the investigation found he'd acted within policy. because 23 minutes of circular verification was deemed appropriate. Shaw genuinely believes he's right because the system told him so. The investigation cleared him. Training certified him, promotion validated him. The system protected him from ever questioning whether detaining someone for 23 minutes because they were black and getting mail might be worth examining. Larry never got an apology, never got compensation, never got acknowledgement, but he paid anyway, $200 more per month for controlled access housing. Lost connection to a neighborhood where he'd lived 3 years. Relationships never fully developed because trust, once eroded, doesn't regenerate. Constant calculation every time he enters public space. Erosion of faith in institutions he'd served. Knowledge that compliance offers no protection. Documentation guarantees no accountability. Total cost, unmeasurable, uncalculated, uncompensated. The department saved money not settling, but didn't prevent the next incident, just ensured the next Larry Alex won't file a complaint at all. This is where stories offer solutions, policy recommendations, reform proposals, training, and oversight mechanisms. But those solutions exist, on paper, in policy manuals, in training curricula, in promises after every viral video. Larry's encounter didn't happen because the department lacked policies. It happened because policies without enforcement are just words. Not because Shaw lacked training, because training without consequences is just time watching videos. Not because there was no complaint process. Because processes designed by institutions protect institutions, not complainants. The system worked exactly as designed. Shaw responded to a call, followed procedures, documented everything, maintained professionalism, used polite language, employed no force, secured voluntary consent. The body camera showed perfect protocol compliance, just not constitutional compliance. In a system prioritizing procedure over rights, that distinction doesn't matter. Larry did everything right. Stayed calm, offered identification, filed detailed complaints, documented everything, consulted attorneys. Knew his rights. None of it mattered. Shaw faced no consequences, received commendation, got promoted, continues patrolling, makes the same stops. The system investigated itself and found no problems. So here's the question. If a 28-year FBI veteran with perfect documentation, witness corroboration, video evidence, constitutional law knowledge, and legal resources can't achieve accountability, what chance does anyone else have? The answer, they don't. That's not a flaw. That's the design. Accountability isn't designed to catch bad officers. It's designed to protect departments from liability, to survive scrutiny while preventing change, to outlast detention and exhaust complainants, to ensure institutional survival takes precedence over individual rights. The system doesn't fail to provide accountability. It succeeds at preventing it. Until we stop pretending that's an accident and start acknowledging it's the design, nothing will change. November 2024, 9 months after the encounter. Tuesday afternoon, 2:30 p.m. Larry walked to his new complex's mailboxes. He retrieved his mail, bills, restaurant flyer, and walked back without incident. No patrol cars, no questions, no forced entry, just a man getting mail. As he walked to Unit 22, he realized he was counting patrol cars again. One at 2:15, another at 2:42. He noted times on his phone, adding to the pattern he'd tracked since moving in. Tuesday afternoon, Zone 4, approximately 27-minute intervals. Inside, he set mail on the counter, stood in his kitchen, his apartment, his home, where he paid rent and signed a lease and had every legal right to be, and understood with perfect clarity he was still calculating, still timing, still watching. Still carrying credentials he shouldn't need, still moving through the world like someone who might have to prove his right to exist at any moment. The encounter lasted 23 minutes. The consequences would last the rest of his life. Across town, Shaw completed his 3 p.m. shift. 2 traffic stops, 1 vehicle inspection, 1 resident contact. Activity report, suspicious person verification, resolved without incident. He secured equipment, went home. Tomorrow, he'd do it again, because the system said he could, and nothing had happened to tell him he shouldn't.